Financial leadership is changing. CFOs no longer record history. They make history. This podcast will help you become a better leader, strategic thinker, and digital visionary. Welcome to Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, the ultimate podcast for chief financial officers. Follow along as Jack McCullough engages in exciting chats with accomplished CFOs, learning how they overcame obstacles and positioned their companies for the future. Here's your host, Jack McCullough.
Welcome back, everybody. And speaking of rock stars, we have a rock star CFO as our guest today. Great guest. Been looking forward to interviewing him for quite some time. Naeem Ishaq is the EVP and Chief Strategy Officer at Checkr, which helps over 100,000 customers modernize their hiring process. He has a 20-year history of scaling disruptive growth in businesses from startup to global, and was in the top 5% of employees at both Salesforce and Square, which I can only assume is a really good thing to be. And he was instrumental in Square's successful IPO. Naeem's raised over $1 billion in capital and has participated in more than 40 merger and acquisition transactions. Welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you for having me. And far too kind on the intro, but I am happy to be here.
No, we're thrilled to be here. And I know what you do, and it's a luxury for me to fundamentally understand a company's business. But I also can oversimplify things a little bit sometimes. So why don't you share with our listeners what your company does?
Sure, yeah. So Checkr is a late-stage venture-backed company that was founded in 2014. Classic Silicon Valley story. Two engineers saw a problem in the world where they were looking for a background check API that didn't exist and decided to invent that. And then we were off to the races. We started with the major gig players like Uber and DoorDash and Instacart. And we've now spread way beyond that too. So today we serve over 100,000 amazing customers of nearly every size and across nearly every industry. And we are certainly at scale as well. So we last disclosed a couple of years ago that we were doing over $700 million a year in revenue, growing at a healthy clip, and are quite profitable too.
No, congratulations. That's a great position to be in. And I definitely want to return to that and some of the opportunities and challenges that you're facing in your company. But before we get into that, I always like to, let our listeners know a little about my guest's background. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up, I'm a first-generation immigrant. I was born in Karachi, Pakistan. My family and I came to the States to Orange County, California, when I was one. And so that's where I grew up. And, and through that, being a first-gen immigrant, I learned a lot about the value of a hard day's work for my mom and dad and my extended family here as well. And, we've been fortunate. It's been very much an American dream success story.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. So, and when you were a kid, what was your first job you ever had? Not in your professional life, but, maybe a job in high school.
Like a lot of other Americans, I started out working at McDonald's. I was a fry cook.
Burger King.
Burger King, there you go. Yeah, you gain appreciation for a hard day's work there too. It's not easy working in a busy and hot kitchen, but that's where I began, and it holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, it's funny. I always, I just think back to lessons. It's so important, that I had part-time jobs as a kid, and I even tell my friends who are pretty wealthy and bluntly their kids don't need to work in part-time jobs, but I'm like, it's a learning and character building thing. So you still love me that I worked at Burger King, even though we were,
the rivalry goes deep, but yeah, we'll let that slide.
All right. Fair enough. So cool. And then, where did you go to school?
I went to school. I did my undergraduate studies at the University of California at Davis, in Northern California.
UC Davis, great program. And what did you study there?
I studied managerial economics, and minored in organizational behavior. Man-econ is sort of like it's a blend of finance, accounting, quantitative methods, economics, a little bit of sprinkle of some other things like marketing and so on as well. But a great major and a very quantitative one.
It wasn't popular, if it even existed at all, and I'm a few years older than you, when I was in school. But from what you described, it sounds almost like if you wanted to be a CFO, that would be a really great major to set you up. Not so much, I was accounting, and, when I became a CFO, everybody had studied accounting, but that sounds like it's prepping up for all the vital things CFOs need to do.
Yeah, it very much did. And, the funny thing is, I didn't start off with any designs of being a CFO. I like numbers and I like the big picture, and that I think lends itself well to working in finance. My first kind of real job, actually, I started while I was an undergrad. I founded a consumer internet company when I was 19 at UC Davis, and that was the thing I knew I wanted to work in technology more than anything else. I think the role itself was a little bit more secondary. The major did very much set me up for success and having the right tools at my disposal when moving into finance, and has continued to serve me well.
You started an internet company at 19.
Yeah.
I was still at McDonald's, for God's sakes. So we're at a different level here. Okay, we were equal until we were about 17, perhaps. Well,
I was often eating at McDonald's, at 2 a.m. While working on the startup. But yeah, no, it was great. And this was, I'm probably a little older than some of the folks on the call too, but would have been, I think late 90s, very much the height of the dot-com bubble. And, I'm going off on a tangent here a little bit, but one of the luckiest things I think in my life is my dad got us an Atari 2600, and I was probably, 4 or 5 years old. And, I think that was my introduction into computing. And, I started programming when I was barely able to read. So I think 7, 8 years old, and, was a hobbyist computer builder back then, even, probably around 10, 11 years old. I still actually build my hot rod, my computers. So it's a real passion of mine. And so I knew I wanted to work in technology. And again, I like numbers. And so, doing the startup thing was great, experientially. And there was a great program called the Sacramento Entrepreneurship Academy that I did concurrently with my last year at UC Davis as well, which also helped me to pursue that. So yeah, I felt really fortunate to be in the right place at the right time there. Ultimately, the startup didn't succeed though. That's another lesson here is I kind of started my career with failure, and kind of had to work out of that, but I certainly don't regret it.
Well, I forget if it was Edison or Einstein, but one of those otherworldly geniuses. They just never acknowledge failure. It's either a learning opportunity. I think Edison said the experiment didn't fail; it eliminated one possibility. Now we're going to the next and next and next. So. Well, good for you. So you graduated, and you worked. You've had a phenomenal career. I think the word icon is maybe thrown around a little too often, but Intel and Salesforce are certainly iconic companies.
Yeah,
and Square is in that category. So talk us a little about your career journey. You must have worked with some brilliant people.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one strong lesson in all this is surround yourself with as many brilliant people as you possibly can. After my startup, I joined Intel in 2002 when it was very much think of the top 2 or 3 technology companies in the world, up there with Microsoft, and Cisco was probably in that category at the time. So probably somewhat analogous to where, maybe a Google or Facebook might be today. And it was very much an academy company. So I learned a lot with some great leaders at that company. But felt like it was starting to go off track, and decided to make the leap a little bit more towards my entrepreneurial roots and joined Salesforce when it was at the time, relative to where it is today, it's a pretty small company. I think like $4 billion market cap, 1,700 employees, I believe, when I joined as well. And saw that company just explode in its growth, and was at the very much at the front end of leading the charge into enterprise cloud computing. So did that for several years, 5 years. Joined Square when it was tiny. I was employee 170. At Square. So very, very much a startup. And so, working with amazing people like Jack Dorsey, Sarah Friar, Gokul Rajaram, Francois Brouwer. I mean, it was just a Hall of Fame lineup of people up and down at that company. And that set me up really well to move into a CFO role. So, I joined S-Box Wholesale as CFO after Square. I joined Circle, the stablecoin company, as CFO as well. And that was my immediate role prior to joining here at Checkr as CFO, and now Chief Strategy Officer too.
Wow. Yeah, that's the one. You worked with some of the most talented people in the world. In fact, not that this podcast is about me, but I was giving an interview to one of those in-flight magazines, that they're not at newsstands, but if you're on a plane and have nothing else to do. And I wasn't prepared for the question, but I was asked who I thought the best CFO in the world was. And I said Sarah. And 6 weeks later, she left and was the CEO of, I think she went to Nextdoor after that.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I don't know her at all or anything like that, but she apparently saw the article, or at least was aware of it. And I joked, I'm the reason you got the job at Nextdoor. So.
I was actually the funny story. Sarah was my manager at Salesforce the last year and a half I was there. And then when she went to go join Square CFO, she effectively brought me with her, and that was a great experience. And we're still very close friends. I consider her one of my most important mentors. And yeah, sort of when you find someone really great, finding ways to continue to work with them. Yeah, even if that means changing companies, I think is can often be well advised.
Yeah, it's I often ask about who the critical mentors are. And if I were to tell like a young future CFO that they could pick their mentor of anyone in the world, she'd be on the short list. You were
Sure.
fortunate enough to actually have her as a mentor. So when
Yes.
you look back, and I'm sure she probably didn't make you better at finance and accounting, but I'm
Mhm.
sure she made you a better leader and strategic thinker. But what are some of the most critical lessons you learned from her and maybe some other mentors along the way as well?
Yeah, I mean, so many. It'd be hard to pick, but from Sarah in particular, I think her really extraordinarily high and exacting standard is maybe the first thing that comes to mind. I remember this. This is when we were at Salesforce. She came in to be the SVP of finance and strategy, and I at the time was the leader for our strategic finance team. And Sarah just, she made it very clear, like everything we do has to be beautiful in addition to insightful and I'm not going to use the word perfect, but it was implied at the very least. And our teams at the time were not used to, it was like, these are internal documents. Like, why does it need to be so, perfectly fit and finish? And she was just really clear because people, it's a part of your brand. Like people will come to learn to trust the work product based upon what the full of it, the look, the feel, the recognition. And if you don't consistently deliver upon that, you're not going to be able to drive the influence that you have. And so that has always stuck with me. And I think it pushed me and many others to kind of up our game on those things. And it flows downhill from there of where you began. And, more broadly, think about all the great mentors that I've learned from. So Jack Dorsey being amongst them, Mark Benioff, notably. I think about Daniel Eunice, our CEO here at Checkr. I think the ability to drive hard for results, but also to be open minded and to see a world that doesn't exist. Jeremy Allaire, certainly CEO of Circle fits this as well. Is quite remarkable and very inspirational.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, I do ask that question frequently. It's amazing the impact that our mentors early career and throughout. And even,
Yeah,
as we get older, sometimes our mentors might be less experienced, but, we can
right.
still learn from those individuals. So cool.
I was fortunate as well in that, I think my mentorship started at home. So my dad, again, he came to the States with $20 in his pocket and a lot of ambition and drive, and has come to become a really successful entrepreneur himself many times over. And just the grit and determination I've seen from him was incredible. I think about my eldest uncle, Iqbal. He went go back to the burger thing. He started, no kidding, flipping burgers at Jack in the Box on a graveyard shift while going to school.
Wow.
And over a 20+ year career, became president of the whole corporation. I mean, just absolutely wild to hear that happening. And but he did it, and so learning from him. And lastly, I'd say my older sister Asma, who's a CEO in the health and beauty space as well. She always believed in me, and even when I didn't believe in myself. And I think there's a lot that I gained from her mentorship too. So I think fortunate in having that firsthand growing up, and then to see that blossom with my professional life as well. I feel incredibly fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you're a very smart, dedicated, hardworking guy, but without the right mentors and the people to kind of guide you, you probably would have figured it out, but on a very different level. So, but
Yeah,
and good for you. So, Jack in the Box, are they still around? Because I
yeah, they are. Yeah, they're around. They're Southern California strength in particular, but yeah, they make the pretty good burgers too.
Yeah, I liked them probably because of my name as much as
Yeah.
anything. Yeah, but they've been in the Boston area for quite some time. But anyway, I want to talk a little about Square. You were involved in the Holy Grail for financial leaders, the CFO,
Yeah.
and I'd love to understand what your role was, and perhaps more importantly, what are two of the three things you learned from that process?
Yeah. So we did go do an IPO in 2015. So when Sarah brought me over, she asked me to join to run effectively our FP&A team, and we rebranded and pivoted to a finance and strategy team. Quickly after that, I quickly also then took on IR after I joined. And when you're in that early stage, the truth is you're not a worker defined by function. At least if you're thinking about the right way, you're just an owner of the company, and you'll do whatever is required. So as funny as it sounds, I was one of the first, growth leaders for Square. I actually helped to start and lead the customer success team, the sales team at Square, which is very unusual from the finance seat. Quickly handed off to professionals who knew how to do it better than I did, but was a fire starter in that way. Ran corporate development for a while. And then the big kind of career move that I was asked to take on was to take on effectively the chief risk officer of the company as well. So that was a full stack team from engineering, product management, operations, multidisciplinary general management role. And I did that concurrently to also being the head of finance strategy and investor relations all at the same time while taking the company public. So very, very big role, and felt honored to have the opportunity, but certainly not an easy job.
No, not at all. So cool. So I'd love to share with you about your current role. And you've been at Checkr for what, about 5 years?
Almost 6 years. Yeah.
Almost 6. Okay. Well, a little understating it, but I'm sort of curious, it's a dumb question because it's an exciting company, but how the opportunity come to you? What was it about it that made you say, yeah, this is where I want to go for the next few years?
So I got a phone call from a gentleman named Oli Ragani. Oli was previously the COO and CFO at Twitter. I knew him more socially than anything, but sort of through the Jack Dorsey kind of universe that exists out there between Twitter and Square. So he called me and said, "Hey, look, I need you to talk to this guy, Daniel." And he wasn't exactly asking. It was more like he was telling me, "You need to go talk to Daniel." I was like, "What? What is Checkr?" And he said, "It's the best company you've never heard of." And I was like, "Well, you're definitely right about one of those two things." And so I to meet with Daniel. Wasn't actively looking at the time. Frankly, it was very much inactive. I was not able to move. And, Daniel and I met in San Francisco. I happened to be there on a business trip. And I was just really blown away by the trajectory of the business, by Daniel himself, and really importantly, the mission behind the business to help, Checkr, where we do background checks for tens of millions of Americans every year. And we tried very hard to also open up opportunity for people who've been impacted by the justice system in some way. And so that really, really resonated with me. So it was attractive. As I mentioned, I wasn't active. I was, very busy with a lot of things at Circle. We had just launched US Dollar Coin. We were doing some significant restructuring at the time. And I told them, "Hey, this sounds interesting, but I'm not available, hopefully, a few months down the line." So that was March of 2019. I called them in November, and shockingly, the role was in fact still open. And, the rest was history. My family and I moved from Boston, where we were with Circle, and moved back to San Francisco, where we had spent most of our adult lives. And again, that was about 6 years ago.
So cool. Yeah, Boston caught my eye. As you know, I'm from suburban Boston.
Yeah.
Where were you living when you were local?
In the city. Yeah, I was right at the, if you know, the Lovejoy Wharf, right near the TD Garden.
Yeah.
And headquarters is at 99 High Street. So it's a nice, pleasant walk to work every day.
Funny, I worked in 99 High Street. KPMG was in the building at the time. Yeah, I was there from, when was I there? Around the same time. I think we missed each other by a couple of years. But anyway.
Okay.
Jessica's going to make us cut that part out of the podcast, unfortunately. So we'll see. But anyway, you made the move to Checkr, and you mentioned the CEO and founder, Daniel Yanesi. And that's such a critical relationship. In fact, what I've observed for a while now, CFOs have said it's the most important professional relationship in their careers. But in the last year or two, it's been reciprocated, where CEOs are now saying that their relationship with the CFO is their most important one. And I'm curious, you've been together close to 6 years, and he's the founder too, right? Which, has an interesting dynamic as well. But how do you build a respectful, productive, strategic partnership with the CEO and founder of the company?
I think that, the root of it is certainly trust. And I think the root of trust is transparency. And so being able to have a direct conversation, being able to be a truth teller, that's, I think, important for any CFO. You have to be, more than perhaps any other role, a real truth teller, and not afraid to call it how it is, and to be able to shine light on things when they're not going well. But I would say just equally importantly, when things are going well, kind of be in some ways, I think about my role and any good CFO's role as being like the pendulum. When the momentum is swinging the other way, it's kind of bringing it back to center. And so I think with Daniel, that's been a lot of that, is to be really committed to each other. I think sharing the entrepreneurial roots is helpful, because I have a appreciation for how hard, I'm not sure there's any job in the world that's more difficult than being an entrepreneur. I think if you haven't done it, it's hard to really appreciate just how challenging that is. And so I have so much deep respect for him and Daniel, pardon me, Jonathan, his co-founder, for what they've been able to build. And so I think having that trusted, deep, honest relationship is so important. It's almost like a sacred relationship. And one of the things I know Daniel, and I really appreciate this, he's shared with me, is there's certainly two and maybe only two roles in the company where in the end, your personal accolades and accomplishments mean nothing if beyond the extent which they help us to achieve our overall goals as a company. And so, we rise and fall together, and we need to create a united view in terms of the vision and the direction for the company to all of our stakeholders, including very much, of course, our board and our rest of our holders, the rest of the executive team. And so I think it's been an incredible journey working with Daniel. Like any business, we've had our ups and downs over the years, and we've always come out stronger, but we've had to make some incredibly hard decisions along the way. And it's been great to be, working by his side and helping to be a part of that.
No, that's fantastic. So now this question I need to ask in order to keep my license as a podcast host who interviews CFOs, but generative AI in your work, and I'm lucky because I happen to know you that you're extremely, knowledgeable, to say the least, in the Gen AI thing. But, what do you think are the biggest opportunities for CFOs in terms of using generative AI that they're not doing it now because they're not embracing it quickly for data security and privacy reasons the way the rest of the C-suite is?
Yeah, I think, there's like narrow answers, which are, you can apply it for automation of workflows and so on. I think that the more interesting and important answer is to be the driver of change within the company. And so I think back to here at Checkr, so, around the time that ChatGPT had launched, it must have been about 3 years ago. And I took that as an opportunity to say, hey, kind of really draw attention from the rest of the executive team and say, look, this is truly the start of the next big wave in computing. And, this has been working and brewing in the background, but now like the gun has fired, and either we need to run ahead with this or we're going to get run over by this. And so, I have been the executive sponsor and champion of our AI efforts for the company here since that time. And those are broad in nature. So it goes across from things like developer velocity and innovation, go-to-market acceleration, operational efficiency, employee productivity. There are so many applications. And so giving people, the mandate to say, hey, look, we all need to get on board here and adopt this, but also in the CFO seat, being the enabler to say, we're going to give you the tools to be able to go for it. We're going to actually create budget. We're going to spend more so that you can get better. And importantly, that this is in service of the company ultimately, but it's also in service of the individual. If folks do not adopt these technologies, they become irrelevant really fast. Like myself included, all of us are in this world. And so being able to communicate that to the company and lower the anxiety, which it often causes when people see AI and how powerful it is, folks, their initial reaction is often fear. But, bringing forward a positive message of reinforcement, say, you shouldn't be afraid of this. You should be enthused by this, and knowing that this can help you become superpowered as an individual, as a team, as a company. And so that's where we've been able to make a lot of progress. We have a couple of innovative things. So, for example, it might sound funny coming from CFO, but we told all employees that you have a budget allocated to try whatever new AI tools you want. You don't need a lot of permission. You can just go for it and expense it. And that's been great because there's so many. It's changing so fast. So we've seen a lot of tools proliferate and be adopted, and then we help to centralize those. And when we really want to kind of double down on those as well, and then working to bring forward new ideas, to shine light on them, to things like our all hands meetings, our employee newsletters, and so on, and setting really stringent goals for what success looks like in each of these key areas. So that has helped us quite dramatically. And I'm proud to say Checkr is very much on the forefront of AI adoption in terms of our workforce. And it's important to remember, as at the very core of what we do at Checkr, we succeed in disrupting a legacy business because we've adopted AI, or applied AI through the form of machine learning from the very beginning. So the net result is we can deliver results that are faster, more accurate, easier to use because we are a natively AI business. And then with the advent, of course, of generative AI here over the last few years, that just puts that into even more of an overdrive mode. So it's been great so far, and we couldn't be more excited about what's to come there.
No, that's an exciting time to be in the workforce with technologies like that. So,
Yeah.
But one other thing I'd like to ask about you, and it's interesting because it's an entrepreneurial company, fast paced, fast growing, and yet you're in an industry that I have to think is probably pretty tightly regulated. Mm-hmm. So, and as the CFO, you probably don't get up every day excited about, compliance and that sort of thing. But how do you sort of juggle those two things? Because it does fall upon you. And if you have an in-house counsel, that person as well. But so how do you sort of rigorous compliance, but don't kill the entrepreneurial spirit of the company?
Yeah. It's, I mean, this is a little bit of a, somewhat open secret. The best businesses are those that are hard to understand and often are regulated in some way because they're really hard to crack into. And this is actually this is insight from Keith Raboy, who was a coworker of mine at Square, and famously a venture capitalist, very successful one. Khosla and Founders Fund was one of the PayPal Mafia folks as well. And so there's a pattern. And if I look back to three of the companies I've worked at recently, Square, Circle, and now Checkr, all were difficult, hard to understand problems, not sexy in a lot of ways, and regulated. And so that creates an opportunity where folks by default, they don't want to innovate because they're afraid to. So if you can come in with the beginner's mind and take a fresh sheet approach to solving those problems and question, well, why do we do these things this way? Then you can create new opportunities and really succeed and build as well, like incredibly deep moats around your business. And so that is something that I might argue I actually look forward to. And it's one of the things I find attractive is when you can find businesses like that because it can be incredibly durable. And then you have to honor the responsibility. Businesses are regulated not for fun, but because there are severe risks and consequences of business practices that don't adhere to the standards we have in society. And so the work that we do, we manage incredibly sensitive data that's PII, but also relevant to your personal history and things like your criminal record, your driving record, your health records. So we have a huge degree of accountability and responsibility that we feel to honor that for all the, again, now tens and tens of millions of people that we've screened over the years and continue to screen every year. And we make sure that we invest to support that responsibility as well.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Most, I think of Silicon Valley or San Francisco Bay is, a bit freewheeling, right? It's, let's just kind of get things done. But you're in an industry that you can't really do that. And yet you're still supposed to, deliver, right? So it's just a different challenge than a lot of your peers might have.
It is a different challenge. And that's where, I think the magic can happen. I think back to, my time at Circle. Circle, fought for years and years and years to be able to bring stable coins into the market and to be able to move money over the open internet. There are like trillions and trillions of dollars at stake. There are geopolitical issues. There's like sovereignty at risk. Like this is like really, really important, critical stuff that's at play. And so that's why it was such a grind. I mean, Circle, it took us many, many years, many, many ups and downs to be able to figure out kind of how to make this work, how to get live in the world, how to see it succeed and thrive. And thankfully, today we're in a place where with this recent IPO and folks can see its financials, like companies performing incredibly well. But that took well over a decade of hard fighting against the calcified structure that's in place that doesn't want things to change in order to move to a better world where we do have more liquidity, we have lower fees, better access. These are all things that as consumers we want.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I want to check also your company, fundamentally a technology company, I suppose, but how do you use data and analytics within finance to drive decision making? And, not only within finance, but maybe company wide as well, because you must be sitting on an awful lot of data.
We are, and yes, it's very much in the DNA and has been for a long time. I think one thing I'll double click on is kind of back to the generative AI mode. Is we've put a lot of investment over the years now into using generative AI for forecasting. We're a consumption-based business. For anyone who's forecasted consumption-based business, it's not exactly easy, and it's quite complex and can be quite volatile. And so we made great strides in leveraging that. Ultimately, you have to have the right pipes and data feeds to make that work. And that's also complicated by businesses when you make acquisitions and make all that plumbing work behind the scenes, which we have certainly had to do over the years as well. But that's been a really, really important part of the progress that we make as a company. And then ultimately the culture of flying by wire and having really clear definitions of success criteria at the onset of any major project, having a culture of being able to do and mandating that we do retros to learn from successes and failures. So we reincorporate that back into how we operate the company. Lastly, I'll note that Checkr, we made the move, actually, Daniel and I implemented this shortly after I joined, of being a long form culture. So away from slides and PowerPoints towards memos, very much inspired by Amazon and its approach. And that, I think, generally just works really well. It's actually hard to go back to slides when you're forced to write out your thoughts in long form. But the best part of that is is being able, it forces you to be really crisp in defining what it is that you're trying to say and the problem you're trying to find and what the solution is you're proposing. But it also creates this incredibly rich data set because virtually every business discussion and decision we've had as a company is documented in long form. And so we now ingest that information into our models. And so we're able to train these models with this like incredibly information dense data set that we have. And that helps us to just make better decisions going forward as well.
That makes sense. Essentially, I think Amazon, they probably didn't invent it, but they were the first one that famously said no more PowerPoints, right? So they just, Bezos or whomever just wasn't a fan of that tool. So I don't know. I'm kind of PowerPoint dependent myself. So partly because I ramble, as you may have picked up on, but like when up on stage, when I don't have PowerPoints or cue cards, it's like, God, who knows what's going to come out of my mouth. So, just a lack of discipline there. But, one of the things I do like about interviewing non-CPA CFOs is, they measure and they think and they evaluate a little bit differently. And I'm curious, do you have any favorite KPIs that you use to measure and report business performance?
I don't know if I have any major favorite KPIs. I think there's, depends. I think the real critical talk here is understand the context in which you're operating and making sure you effectively, to say, as they say, that you use the right tool for the right job. And so KPIs are a tool to guide business decisions, to inform your progress against your goals and so on. And whether it's a business where you're in, B2B subscription business or a consumption-based business or a consumer-based business, they all have different KPIs that are important. And then those KPIs need to fit within the context of the broader strategy that you're trying to pursue. And the danger is you choose the wrong KPI and you might be succeeding on that measure, but you're actually going off of a cliff because it doesn't matter. And I'll give you a recent example. Checkr has launched very recently a consumer product that we're very excited about. And, it's starting to monetize really well, which is great too. In this case, again, sacrilege for a CFO, say, actually, I don't think, and I'm quite certain, like revenue is not the right measure for us to be optimizing for. It should be user engagement, virality. Those are the measures that will drive long-term revenue growth. And so like being overly focused on, your revenue growth might actually be counterproductive to the overall strategy and direction. So, for me, it's actually less about the specifics of the KPIs, more it's like, which is the right KPI for the right job at that right time.
Yeah, no, that makes a whole lot of sense. So one thing I want to talk to you, you've got a lot going on right now, CFO of a busy company, but you're on 2 different boards of directors. And I'd like to explore that a little bit. Tell us about those companies and, how they came about. And you're on another one that's kind of a board, but Checkr.org is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about Foodix and Outschool. Well, Foodix.
Yeah, absolutely. So Foodix, I've been on the board. It's a fintech company based out of KSA. I've been working with them formally on the board for about 6 years and was informally an advisor for a couple of years prior to that too. So almost for the whole history of the company. They had reached out to me blindly over a LinkedIn request while I was actually way back when I was still at Square. So, it's been quite a long time and incredible business. One of the real innovators in the region. And, I think good things ahead of it for where it's going. I also serve as the chair of the compensation committee. Don't do it. Not exactly the easiest job in the world. It's fraught with conflict, of course, but an important one. I shouldn't denigrate that. More recently, I joined the board of Outschool, as a tech company based out of San Francisco, and was an advisor for 2 years prior to that too. I knew their founder CEO was a coworker of mine from Square. Again, the Square Mafia is quite strong. And it's been great to work with that team and, very different lens. And, fintech's a little bit closer to what I've done historically at tech. It's not something I've ever worked in, but, I'm a father of a young child and it's something that's near and dear to my heart as well and helping to, improve and evolve the educational system. So that's been great. And then, and Checkr.org is a different angle. It's a philanthropic arm that I was fortunate to help co-found back, it's been probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. And I've served on the board of that from the beginning. And we're doing a lot of great work. We're a proud member of the Pledge 1% community. So for those folks who don't know, we pledge 1% of our company equity. That's a big number, along with 1% of our profits to this 501c3 nonprofit organization. And we're doing a lot of great work to help people, find opportunity and with a special focus on folks who have been formerly incarcerated.
Well, that's great that you're doing that. And if I may ask, what motivated you to do that? Because, you don't have a lot of financial people. No disrespect meant to anyone, but, starting foundations. So
it's a great question. I started a small foundation with a friend back when I was at Intel. And It ultimately was a big part, and that was focused on helping to fight climate change. And when I came to leave Intel and was looking for my next job, and I was talking with folks at Salesforce, I learned about the 1-1-1 model, which is what Pledge 1% is based on, and that was actually was started by Salesforce and Mark Benioff specifically. And it's very inspirational to say you can you can have a great business that's generating lots of profits and revenue growth and so on, but you can also do good in the world. And we're going to make it a corporate priority to go do that. So I was very inspired by that. When I met Daniel, our CEO, that first time, and heard about the mission of the business, even back when during my first interview, I said, "Hey, Daniel, this sounds amazing. Like, do you have a formal effort around this? And if not, can I help you to get that going?" He was like, "Absolutely, I'd love to go do that." And so about a year after I joined, revisited that conversation and we got it moving. It's not easy going to your shareholders and say, "Hey, we're going to carve off 1% of our equity, for this purpose," but with a lot of hard work and persuasion and support, most importantly from our two co-founders, who are of course, the biggest shareholders in the company, to say, yes, we care about this and we're going to come out of our own pocket to go make this a priority. We're able to get that done, and it's been off to the races since then. So in the end, it's just, you go back to your previous comment, Jack, like we're so fortunate. I mean, just being an American, and I feel so fortunate to have an opportunity to even be in this country. I'm an immigrant, and this country has given so much to me and my family, and we've been so fortunate to be in, and working in tech and be part of the real engine of our economy. Anything I can do to help give a little back, I think is an honor and a privilege. And so that's where that was rooted.
That's very good. So, and on a business note, these are great things that you're doing. And I'm curious, so you're on two traditional boards and then a founding board member of a nonprofit, but does that change how you approach your role as a chief financial officer? So, do you maybe more empathetic to board members or whatever, or, does it just change sort of how you approach your day job?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, that's the exact word I would use, as it gave me so much empathy when you sit on the other side of the table, and the biggest takeaway is you realize just how little context board members have about the business. Because before that moment, I would go in and say, "Well, we talked about this last board meeting. We send you monthly updates and go through this." That is true, but board members spend what, 5 hours, 10 hours a quarter, if you're lucky, thinking about your business. You spend 100 hours a week thinking about your business. It's such a disparity, and because of that, we're biased to think that, well, of course they know and they're part of the team. And this is true; they are part of the team. But remembering to slow down, restate, reestablish, and really distill the information is probably the biggest lesson I've had from that. And I think that's made me better in my job as a CFO and an executive. The other part that's really been eye-opening too is it just keeps you mentally sharp when you see different problems. Like, again, I love my business and I love working on our problems, but those are deep problems and we're working on them for years and years. It gives you some exposure to different types of problems and different contexts. Foodix is outside the US. It's the first time I worked at a company that wasn't American-based. Outschool is a tech company. It's an area that I've never worked in at all. And so it's understanding how they think about value creation, how they think about working through their business challenges and opportunities. It's brought a lot of business ideas to me that I've helped to try to deploy here at Checkr. And so I think it's very much a two-way street. Certainly, I try to bring my expertise and experience to bear at those companies, but I feel like I gain as much, if not more, out of that as a board member.
Well, that sounds good. And so a lot going on, and all work and no play makes this kid makes Jack a dull boy. But I believe is the actual expression. But you got a lot going on. So do you have any hobbies or maybe any, outside interests that have nothing to do with your professional self?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my daughter first. So my 7-year-old is my whole world. And so she and I love to go bike riding with my wife. And we also love to play video games together without my wife. Her favorite game right now is Ultimate Chicken Horse. Great game for all ages, which we love. And then more independently, I'm a very avid baseball and football card collector. That's probably my primary sort of hobby. I love sports as well, so it sort of ties back to that. And I've doing grading and submissions and things of that nature has been a lot of fun.
Good for that's a Well, who would have thought that baseball and football would be so lucrative? I threw out all of my cards. I believe I had like I think I had like a Nolan Ryan rookie card in the trash. It would probably be worth. I have no idea, but I bet it'd be worth $10 grand today. I mean, it would have been mint. It wouldn't have been in mint condition with me on
Sure.
it, but had I kept it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. What's your daughter's name?
Cora.
And she's 7, you said?
She's 7 years old, going into second grade next week.
Oh, fun age. Good for her. So cool. Well, getting back a little bit to business, love to get your perspective. CFO roles change quite a bit. It's actually changed quite a bit even since you've been in your most recent role. When you look ahead, not that you have a crystal ball, but how do you see the nature of the CFO changing in the next few years?
I think maybe just it's certainly a continuation of the broadening of the role from more of a, they always say the scorekeeper, the person who will report the news but not make the news, to, very much expected to make the news too. So I see that, if anything, I'll just continue to accelerate. And then the merger of technology and all job functions it's not isolated to the CFO role, but I think it'll hit us, quite strongly. I'm an active angel investor in my limited free time as well. And it's really fascinating seeing all the new AI first, agentic first solutions are coming out in the office of the CFO, whether it's procurement or ERP, accounting, cash management. There's this incredible. And so, continue to evolve and push those things forward so that, the enterprise can thrive, become more efficient, but then also grow even faster and make the jobs more rewarding. I don't know that anyone loves following routine, checklists as part of their job. And if that can create an opportunity for them to do more outside of that, AI is a great way to get there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So cool. And you sort of touched on it, but I do like to ask if you have any advice for the next generation of CFOs, maybe those people who their next job's likely to be a CFO type role. What should they be thinking about to not only get their role, but flourish once they have the opportunity?
Just, don't be afraid to go after the hardest problem. I mean, that's the simple truth. And, almost every job transition I've had, in fact, I think every job transition I've had, most people have said, don't do it. This is silly. So go back to when frankly, when I founded my startup, I was ridiculed. People said, stupid. What do you think you're doing? Like, what are you turning on these amazing big companies? I said, no, I'm going to go do that. And it was an amazing learning experience. When I thought about leaving Intel to join Salesforce, 9 out of 10 people said this is a huge mistake. I've never heard of this company, Salesforce. Intel is a titan of industry. It's a bellwether. You're doing great. What are you doing? Same thing when I left Salesforce to join Square. 9 out of 10 people said this is crazy. This guy Jack Dorsey, he's a Twitter guy, whizzing about payments. It's a regulated business. Like, it's going to fail. They have tough competitions, low margins. And on and on and on every time it's gone after that. And I said, no, but you think about it carefully. I'm like, well, one, these are hard problems for sure, but out of hard problems, you come out a lot of value. And if you can be willing to fight it out, then you're going to do great. So I think that there's one takeaway from that. It's just like, don't be afraid to take on the hard thing and dedicate yourself to, have the grit to grind through it. I think it certainly has served me well. And, and again, I guess as a corollary to that too is, don't follow the crowd. The crowd is often wrong. And, especially if you want average results, following the crowd is a great path. If you want extraordinary results, it just almost never works by definition. And so I think that has been an important part of the success story here too.
I think I'm stealing that quote. If you want average results, follow the crowd. And that's a wonderful quote. So that said, look, I know you're really busy. So, on behalf of the listeners, really grateful for you taking the time to be with us today. And whatnot. And with that, I'd just love to give you the final word.
Yeah, I'm going to steal this from the internet, but you can just do things. We'll close with that.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To continue your exploration of this role that focuses on strategy, leadership, finance, and technology, listen to more episodes of the show at rockstarcfos.com. Join this revolution, episode by episode. Push yourself to achieve great things and unlock the best opportunities available to you. CFOs are creating a legacy, and it's time for you to leave your own unique imprint on the world today. That's all for now. See you on the next one.